I'd like to call this meeting the Executive Assembly to order, please. This is our meeting of July 11th, 2017. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance. Here. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Croft.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Dyson. Chair Trainee, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next time, I pledge allegiance. Ms. Gray Jackson, since you're here, please lead us in the pledge.
Yay.
You don't get out, Elvie. You too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Thank the two of you. There are no minutes of previous meetings. They're all caught up. Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor, sir.
Nothing to report. Thank you, sir.
Assembly Chair's report. The administration just sent out through the Budget Department projections on this next year's budget. I don't know if you have the letter, but I will send it to you. I've got a copy of it. And it projects about $20 million deficit as we move into doing next year's budget. That's going to really deal with how we can appropriate funds. So I want to make sure you know where the administration is saying we're going as we start to put this budget together. It's something we have to keep in mind. A lot of it is not our doing. It's out of Juneau, but we still have to deal with it. Committee reports. Mr. Dyson, I'll start with you, sir. Anything?
Report, sir.
Mr. Demboski, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I do not have a report, but I do have a disclosure to make. Would you like me to do that now?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
They're always enjoyable.
All right, let me just flip my page here. Mr. Chair, by way of disclosure, item 9 Delta 1, it's AM 524-2017. It's a purchase agreement for 3 fire engines. All 3 fire engines that are being purchased are at different stations from which my husband works. However, he is a captain with the Anchorage Fire Department and a member of IFF Local 1264. I make the disclosure for you and the public to rule on any potential conflict.
It's a ruling that Sherry doesn't have a conflict of interest, ma'am, unless they're buying the trucks from your family or from him. Short of that, you don't have a conflict, ma'am. Mr. Constant, sir, anything?
No, thank you.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On June 28th, the Ethics and Election Committee had our monthly meeting, and we discussed some of the problems we have with the state-owned vote counting equipment and projected in the future problems that are probably going to increase with that equipment over the years. We also talked about our delivery of the vote-by-mail equipment that we expect to be coming in here relatively soon, and also about a mock election to test that equipment that we're planning for September.
Good.
Thank you.
That'll be a state-of-the-art system when it's up and running. Versus the state system, it's about 30 years old. Nobody uses 30-year-old computers anymore.
Right, they can't even get parts for it anymore.
No, you can't.
Only way you can fix the stuff is cannibalize the stuff you already have.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Croft, sir.
The Public Safety Committee will meet tomorrow from 11 to 1. We're all in room 830 now, right? All committees.
Yep. Everything's there.
In the upper conference room 830. We'll hear presentations from Fire Chief LeBlanc on opiate calls and the rise in both spice and opiate calls that AFD is dealing with, and what we believe to be the related increase in property crimes, home break-ins, and auto thefts. And we'll be hearing from APD, the new Chief Dahl, about some of the plans he has to combat that.
And that meeting is open to the public, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Transportation Committee was going to meet this week, but we've decided to postpone that meeting. We're still working with industry to develop a suite of reforms in the wake of the reforms that we made last year. Because I will be absent from the July 25th meeting, as I will be out of the country, we hope to have a meeting again in August.
Thank you, sir. Melissa France, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Mr. Steele, sir.
We will not have an enterprise committee meeting this month, but I would encourage everybody to take the trip out to Plant 2A, take a look at it. We do have tours scheduled for Thursday.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to let the body know that there's an upcoming Homelessness Committee meeting next Wednesday, July 19th, 11 a.m., Mayor's Conference Room, and the public is invited. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. John?
Thanks. The Community and Economic Development Committee met on last Thursday on the 6th, and you'll hear from us on 3 items on today's agenda. We also had a good discussion and a tour of the mapping system for where marijuana facilities are in the city, and you can see that on muni.org, and it's very impressive how you can really get all the information you could want there. We've had some concerns about, as the industry grows, people are seeing shops pop up and concerned about how many are in their particular neighborhoods. So that's a good way to get an idea of exactly what's where. Thanks.
Well, I know which Assembly District has the most. Mine. Anyway, we move on. Let's see. Mr. Dunbar, I'm going to need a motion on the consent agenda. Move to incorporate the consent agenda and lay it on the table items, if you would, and I'll go through them.
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda and the laid on the table items.
Okay. Read this. Addendum to the agenda. Consent agenda item 9A, resolution for actions. It's Resolution AR 2017-253, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring Chief Christopher Tully for his dedicated service to the Anchorage Police Department. Item 9B5A, Resolution AR 2017-251S, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly requesting the State of Alaska Marijuana Control Board to adopt regulations allowing on-site consumption of marijuana or approve designated areas for on-site consumption in licensed retail marijuana establishments. Item 9D12, a same memorandum, AM 553-2017, sole source contract with Concentric Energy Advisors for providing professional expert witness services for the municipality of Anchorage. Municipal Light and Power, MLNP $500,000. Item under resolutions, ordinance and resolution for introduction. Item 9F7, a resolution AR 2017-252, resolution of the municipality of Anchorage approving a master task exempt lease purchase agreement loan and appropriating an amount not to exceed $5,800,000 to the Information Technology Fund 607 and the appropriation of those funds to the Capital Improvement Fund 608 for SAP implementation, Finance Department. Public hearing question on that is 7/25/2017. There's accompanying a semi-memorandum with it, AM 536/2017. On page 2, under new public hearings, we've got item 14E2, resolution AR 2017-274S, 247S, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M10890, doing business as True North Cannabis, and located at 735 West 4th Avenue, Downtown Community Council, case number 2017-0079, Municipal Office of Planning, Municipal Clerk's Office and Planning Department. And then we've got, laid on the table items, there should be 2 of them. Resolutions for actions, this is item 9B6, resolution AR 2017-255, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly requesting the governor and Alaska legislature to act to prioritize the allocation of permanent fund dividends seized from convicted felons and other criminals for restorative justice to the Crime Victim Compensation Fund for payment of restitution to victims of serious crimes and to restore them to pre-offense conditions. From Assembly Member Dyson. Item 9B7, resolution AR 2017-256, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly directing the administration to report periodically on the operation and management and revenues and expenses for the George M. Sullivan Sports Arena. I'm bringing that one forward. Is there any other laid on the table items? Not seeing any. Let's vote on the inclusion of those. Let's see where to go. Let's clear the speaker. Objection to the approval of those items to our agenda. Not seeing an objection, Madam Clerk. So noted. That was accepted unanimously. We're now going to go through and pull those items for a little further discussion. Mr. Dunbar, I'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I need a second. Okay. We'll now go to those people who want to pull something for a little further discussion. Mr. Dyson, sir. Okay. Mr. Bosky, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 9 Bravo 5 as well as 9 Bravo 5 Alpha, which is on the consent agenda, or it was on the addendum.
9 Bravo 5 in both places. Okay. Thank you, Amy. Mr. Constance.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No items this evening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cross, sir.
Nothing to pull.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At your request, I will pull item 9B7.
And request that comes up right after item 14F for action.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. France, ma'am.
No items, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Steele, sir.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No items.
Anything else, sir?
Oh, your chicken's been looking good.
John?
Around to me, sorry. 9D12.
9D12. Anything else? Okay, we've only pulled item 9B5, both in the agenda and in the addendum of the agenda. We've pulled item 9D12. Mr. Dunbar pulled for me item 9B7. Is that all, Madam Clerk? Yes. Okay. Please vote on the balance of the consent agenda. Those items were approved unanimously. We'll now go back to those items that were pulled for a little further discussion. Ms. Dembowski, item 9B5, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not going to move 9B5 because I believe the maker intended for the S version to replace that. However, I would like to set item 9B5 Alpha for a public hearing on July 25th. It's our next meeting.
Is there a second? Moving to seconded for a public hearing on the 25th, ma'am?
Yes, sir. May I speak to my motion?
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oftentimes, when we have significant policy decisions, us as 11 people on the Anchorage Assembly, out of a city of 300,000 people, say this is the position that the Assembly or the city of Anchorage is taking. However, this potential resolution has had zero public input. And I think when we make such a substantial public policy declarative statement that this is what the city of Anchorage wants to do, I think it's important to have the public weigh in. I'm a stickler for public process, and that's why I'm setting it for our very next meeting. If this would have gotten to us sooner, we could have had the public hearing tonight. I recognize the Marijuana Control Board has a meeting on July 12th, which, you know, if we set it for a public hearing, obviously they won't have it. But I did have a sidebar with one of the makers, and I recommended that you go ahead and send the resolution and say the Assembly is considering this resolution. But I think whenever we have a substantial policy decision, especially when it comes to something that's so closely past the municipality of Anchorage, like 51%, I think it's important that the public weighs in. And that's why I'm asking to set this for a public hearing.
Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't support that motion. The reason and the rationale of moving this is because the Marijuana Control Board is meeting this week to ask this question, and the issues and constraints that are driving this question are real and on the street today. And I would just offer that we aren't setting a policy decision if this passes, essentially, and then if the Marijuana Control Board acts, then the policy question comes back before us to be thoughtfully delved into with public hearings, probably several committee meetings. So there will be lots of heat and light at some point, but this is not that time.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Willetton, sir.
We discussed this at the Community and Economic Development Committee last week, and we did not agree to move it forward with a recommendation or to not recommend it, so we kind of sent it forward neutrally. And my own thing, I agree with Mr. Constant, actually. I mean, I understand the idea with the Ms. Domboski's idea, but I do think this is just saying, hey, make a decision. Let's see where we land. And but all the details on secondhand smoke and safety and so on would be something we'd work out on our own. And this is basically give us a chance to do that. And I think it's needed. We need to address this. Where can people consume? It's just the way it is. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Weddleton and Mr. Constant have said. You know, we had a pretty robust discussion about this at the Community Economic Development Committee. I'm also opposing this motion, both because I think we need to pass it or not pass it before the Marijuana Control Board, but also because, as I mentioned earlier, I will be absent from the July 25th meeting, and this is something that I would like the opportunity to vote on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tend to agree with the public hearing aspect, but I also understand that we need to make our position known to the board before they take action. And so it seems to me that we could send them a copy of the drafts for just for information purposes if this passes and we hold it over for public hearing.
Ms. Domboski, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I'll just take a second bite just to cover some of the points. There's been multiple members tonight that say this is not a policy position. It's completely false. It says the Anchorage Assembly resolves the Assembly strongly supports adoption of regulations or approval of designated areas for on-site consumption. It clearly is a policy decision. It clearly is a significant one, saying that the City of Anchorage supports this position and you're doing it without any public input. I think it's bad public policy, and I think it's bad representation to start this trend. And I recognize timing is tricky because it might be just the fact that some of the newer members, you know, we typically don't have resolutions for a public hearing, but we do when there are significant policy decisions. And so I think the timing is a little quirky just because they have their meeting this week and this was put on the addendum. But that doesn't relinquish our responsibility to listen to the public and weigh the public comments when we make a significant policy decision. It's not anti this. It's just saying, and that's why I tried to give an alternate, you know, send this resolution as it is saying to the Marijuana Control Board saying, look, we're considering this right now and we may support it, but we wanted to have public input. I think they would get where we're coming from. So for me, I'm about public process, and I think we can improve a little bit here.
Mr. Constant, sir, on the motion in front of us.
Yeah, so I would offer that the item wasn't actually laid on the addendum. The addendum just has some additional information. It was put on the regular agenda, and it was published 11 days before this meeting. And there was a committee meeting held in which was publicly noticed, and this item was on the public agenda that was published. It's not like there's any sleight of hand going on here or intent to deceive, and there was an opportunity for public input at that time.
Mr. Croft, sir, you've been bouncing in and out. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I think it bounced me out, but I'd like to stay in. And while we don't normally have public testimony for resolutions, this is a resolution based on a public vote. This really, the mechanism that brought this before us was the public expressing that it wanted this done a certain way, and we're all trying to interpret exactly what that means. I think this is one of those things that we ought to hear the public out before passing. I also, while I've expressed before that I worry what we have now is a trap, selling a product where there's no effective place you can use it. The resolution as it stands talks about consumption on licensed premises. It may be that they legitimize use in other private areas, the state does. It may be they respond to the initiative in other ways. I'm not positive that smoking it while I think having some place to use a now legal product makes sense. I don't know that it has to be on the licensed premises where they are selling it. I'm still trying to figure out my position on that. And I do think public testimony would help. So while we don't usually do that, and I agree with Ms. Demosky that the fact that this was here and we are having public testimony on it says something to the Marijuana Control Board about our concerns about it. It's not the final thing, but it's a message that this is an issue. So I would like to hear the public, and I would like to have it done at the next meeting. This meeting, I understand why it was difficult to do. Well, I'm not alleging that there was any sleight of hand. It was put on the regular agenda. I just think it's one of those special ones that we ought to hear from the public on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not excuse me, not a new topic. We've been discussing this since the very beginning meetings of the Marijuana Committee when we were first setting up the ordinances and structure for legalization of marijuana. And the Marijuana Control Board at the state level has just sort of been dragging their feet, and they keep talking about at some point in time they're going to make a decision about where this is going to be allowed and where it isn't going to be allowed. And I just think that this is us telling them that finally now's the time for you to make your mind up. It's been over 2 years, going on 3 years now, so either tell us that it's going to be allowed or tell us it's not going to be allowed. But the system, the way we have it set up now, for a tourist coming to town that decides they want to buy some legal marijuana, and then they can't find somewhere to smoke it, and then they end up getting a $100 ticket is sort of a bait and switch situation. So we've created sort of a catch-22. And so we use legal to buy it, but there's nowhere to legally smoke it. And so I just feel like we have to encourage the state to make some sort of decision so that we can structure our ordinances around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Trainee, you've handed me the gavel. Would you like to say something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to speak on this. And to do that, I've got to give you the gavel. I'm in favor of what Mr. Bosky is saying. We need to hear from the public on this. I really don't care about the tourists that come to town. I'm not here to help them come into town. I'm not here to help them leave town. They're part of what we have, but we don't write our ordinances to make Alaska, Anchorage more attractive to tourists coming in here. We've got people that live here. And part of my problem with this, it specifies downtown. And as I told Mr. Constant before, downtown is no more special than Fairview, Mountain View, Midtown, or any other place. So when I look at the language and I say, well, we want a special constraint for downtown, no. It's like any other part of Anchorage. So I'll be voting for this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tend to agree with Mr. Peterson. I think this is an issue we just can't ignore any longer, and the state has ignored this as well and made failed attempts. And if the state is going to work on this, then Anchorage should have its voice heard in the process. So I will be voting against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Constant, sir. It's like your third time.
It's good to be on the assembly. So I just would add, for those of you who are concerned that this speaks to the downtown, that I would love to take you on a walk and show you where the impacts, your concerns are well heard, that we don't want to see our town turn into a certain kind of place, and that there are places that are now de facto public consumption locations in the downtown. And this is a response to the fact that that's happening, and it's not fair that if you walk through any of the parks in the downtown, that there is a pervasive odor that a lot of people don't want to smell. And so I would also be glad to walk through your neighborhood parks and see the scale and scope of that usage impact, because I can take you directly to places that are now de facto public consumption locations.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Steele, sir.
Well, since we're getting multiple shots at this,
We're about done.
I actually would like to see it expanded. I think that the state may even want to offer a small quantities license or something, so that we can have establishments that may want to have a room that's a marijuana room to separate it from another room in the establishment, restaurants and that type of thing. So I think there's all kinds of stuff we look at, but it is a legal product, and there ought to be places where you don't have to break the law to consume it. So I think it needs to even go a little further than what we've got.
On that note, we're at the end of our discussion. Please vote. Oh. I voted yes. I voted yes. I don't know why it came up no. Would you let the minutes reflect I intended to vote yes on that? Sorry about that. Must hit the wrong button. Okay. That was not approved. What was the vote?
The motion.
Yeah. Motion. What was the vote on it? 4-7. Sorry, Mr. Musk, that not get approved by the body.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I did not make a motion to approve, so somebody needs to do that.
Okay, you're right. Mr. Constant, you want to make your motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on this? If not, please vote.
Excuse me, point of order. I think, did you have an amendment on this one? Or would
It's sufficient enough. I don't need the amendment.
Okay, so we're just going
Let
unamended.
it go.
Okay.
No, I appreciate our attorney doing it for me, but taking a look at it, it does cover our secondhand smoke ordinance. So we're fine. Okay, we got those done. Next one that was pulled was item 9B7 off the laid on the table items. That was Resolution Number 2017-2326, resolution of the explicit assembly directing the administration to report periodically on the operation, management, revenues, and expenses of the George M. Sumlin Sports Arena. I asked you to pull that, Mr. Dunbar. What we want to do is we need a motion to take that up right after 14F.
So I move to change the order of the day to take this item up after 14F.
9B.
Is there any objection to that? See no objection, Madam Clerk. That item will come in front of us. This item, right after item 14, is dealt with.
Mr. Chair,
The body. Yes, sir.
Ms. Domboski pointed out that we did not read a resolution. Were we waiting for some
Oh,
reason?
Chief Tully's not going to be here.
Okay, thank you.
That's the reason we didn't do it. Next item that was pulled was item 9D12. 9 Delta 12, I think it was.
That is correct.
And let's figure out where that one went.
This is so chaos tonight.
Where?
I don't have it.
I see 9D11. Where's 9D12 at?
I think I saw it.
Okay, item 9D12, a memorandum AM 535, 2017, sole source contract with Concentric Energy Advisors for providing professional expert witness services for the municipality of Anchorage. That was pulled by you, Mr. Constant, I think.
Weddleton.
Mr. Weddleton, you pulled that. Sorry, Mr. Constant.
Okay.
Mr. Weddleton, sir, we'll need a motion.
I guess I have a question first. Is this is just a memorandum just to let us know, or was there a resolution? And if it is, I can't find it. We just got that this evening, so
It's under new business, it's a business item, and that would approve it. To administration, you got a comment on this one?
Mr.
To
Johnston.
help clear it up?
Mr. Johnston and/or Ms. Henderson can answer any specific
Okay,
questions about
appreciate it.
this, but it's essentially approving a sole source award. That's why it's an AM.
It's a business item.
Move to approve.
so-
Mr. Weddleton, sir.
okay, but that was just something. Like, okay, so sorry. I guess, Mr. Johnson, I just wanted to give you a chance to speak to this. I know there's a little bit in the newspaper, and it seemed like that was a little misleading on what this was about, and we had a brief conversation and brought some clarity to it. And then the second thing is this says $500,000. Does this say not to exceed, or we're pretty sure we're going to go through that $500,000?
Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, we had to estimate the cost. The consultant has suggested that this work related to 2A is going to be less than $500,000, but they are not as familiar with the intervener in this particular instance and the zeal with which they pursue items. So we believe that the number is closer to $500,000.
Okay, and just to make clear, so this is to pay for expert opinions. So it's kind of, you got a legal case and you need to have professionals come and plead your case for why we built the new power plant. That is
Yes, in our current rate case that's before the Regulatory Commission, one of the interveners, Providence, has challenged the prudence of the decision to build the power plant, and their option is that it be excluded, so the entire $300+ million investment be excluded from our rates. We need to hire an expert to provide testimony, both in a written form and then at hearing to be able to refute the issues that they have brought forward before the RCA.
Okay. And should we lose this case, then what happens?
If the RCA was to rule that it was in fact not prudent, which we don't believe is the case, but we would then have the option to take the issue to the Superior Court.
Okay, and if it fails there, then what happens?
Then we would, the plant would be an off-book item, so it would most likely become an unregulated asset, and then whether it is owned by the municipality or by ML&P, we would have the ability to sell the power to any of the utilities, including ML&P.
Okay, so I guess my problem on this, so we have $500,000 here, potentially $1.5 million over 3 years of running this case. Is it maybe just let it go and spin off the plant as a separate entity and we're good to go and save $1.5 million? Or is this, would we, in doing that, lose a substantial amount of money, so we have to do this?
Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, the answer is we don't know specifically, but the issue is that our customers, ML&P customers, would be disadvantaged by not having the plant providing electricity to them at the low rates, because it is the lowest cost plant in the rail belt. And so we believe that it is in our best interest and the interest of our ratepayers to pursue this and have it determined to be a prudent decision on the part of ML&P.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whittleton. Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, what would the potential cost be if Providence was successful in excluding 2A? What would the potential cost be that we were looking at because 2A wasn't included?
Through the chair, Ms. Dembowski, it's hard to quantify that number, but when we were in the test mode late last year for running with the existing generation that we have, which would have excluded 2A at the time, we were paying somewhere between $1 to $2 million more per month in fuel cost to provide the power to our customers.
That's pretty substantial. So in your opinion, as the guy at the top of ML&P, this expenditure to try to defend the decision to build 2A is cost benefit to the city?
Absolutely, because in looking at the power plant, we believe that it will save a minimum of $8 million a year in fuel cost that will benefit ML&P customers. It will also have the ability to sell power to the power pool and benefit other customers for Chugach and MEA, and our customers will benefit from those sales in reduced cost.
Right. And if for some reason, right now you're asking for $500,000 with two options potentially to go up to 1.5, but the Assembly can be reassured if you hit the maximum that we're approving tonight, you will have to come back to us and justify ongoing legal fees for this.
Absolutely. Because of the way purchasing works, we put in the additional amounts in years 2 and 3. In the event that there was some type of appeal process that was necessary. We don't believe that we will end up spending either of the second or third year amounts. In fact, it's possible we may not spend the first year amount in total. That is what we would hope, but that's going to be somewhat dependent upon Providence and their zeal with which they pursue this item.
Sure. So looking at this from a perspective of cost benefit, we spend up to $500,000 maybe this year to defend our decision to build Plant 2A, which ultimately could save $8 million a year. I understand where you're coming from. I'll support this. And I just ask if you have significant changes in the case or your case in front of the RCA, that maybe, whether it's an executive session or not, that you keep us really up to date on this particular case.
We will do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Croft, sir.
Help me understand what Providence is interested in this. How do they benefit if our rates go up or because this plant was excluded?
Through the chair, Mr. Croft, Providence, and I can't speak specifically for them, but what I believe they think is that with the current 37.3% increase that is interim and refundable, they believe that if they can exclude it, then the cost to them would actually be less. I believe they are incorrect. In fact, I believe their cost would actually go up as a result of it.
Thank you.
And Alaska Regional, do they get power from MLNP also?
They do.
Have they entered this with RCA also?
They have not.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, sir. Good, exactly. Please vote. That is approved. Keep us posted. That completes our consent agenda. Mr. Dyson, you needed a moment of personal privilege, Mr. Dyson.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you asked me to motion to approve the consent agenda?
No, sir, we're all done with everything. But Amy said that you needed a moment for personal privilege.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sometimes there's a proverb in our culture that says God looks after fools, and in my case, old fools. But we just passed an item that I didn't intend to be on the agenda tonight. I intended to be laid on the table for your consideration for another time. And you passed it. And I was a little startled and a bit asleep at the switch.
Well, Fred, anything you bring forward to us, we automatically assume it's inspired.
Yeah, kindly but probably unwarranted assumption. And what we passed commits the mayor to some action. And so I went and visited with him, and he actually in the legislature worked with me on some restorative justice concepts that are now part of state law. And he said, no, he's fine with it. And he's glad to join us. But I want you all to know the significance of what we have just done. The state takes the permanent fund dividends that felons would have received and puts it in an account whose primary use is the restoration of victims. And that has been being ignored by successive administrations. And I tumbled to this about 5 years ago. And the court has awarded often several $1 million of court-ordered restitution. And the perpetrators are often unable to meet that. But this fund was set up decades ago, 1988 as I remember, which I wasn't in the legislature at that time. And successive administrations have used that money, which is run between 11.5 and 19 million a year, and they've used it for corrections department subsidy, often unknown to the legislature's financial committees. And so I got a bill passed by last year in the legislature that forbid that sort of thing, and got it through the Senate, 19-zip, had the votes lined up in the House, and indeed it got killed by one of the stupider things that the House Finance Committee ever did in the last 3 days of legislature. I also, at the time, had one of my staff members do the research, and it very clearly shows, I believe, that the governor has the authority to easily redirect that money where it ought to go. The past two governors have chosen not to do that, in spite of my legendary charm and intimidation. And this governor, I served on his transition team, gave him a package on it, gave him another one after he was inaugurated, and nothing has happened. And I am frustrated and irritated. And I had Mr. Gates draft this resolution. He objected to the rude and colorful language that I used and cleaned it up. But what you have before you is, I think, a significant step. And if indeed this doesn't encourage cooperation, and I intend to speak eloquently to the press about it, we are in arrears $93 million in court-ordered restitution, and there are hundreds of Anchorage victims who are waiting for years to get their hospital bills paid, their lost time paid, and the forfeit of their own assets that were needed to pay their medical bills. So I'm outraged about it, and I appreciate your support. If it was informed and knowledgeable, thank you. If you did it inadvertently, thank you too. But I believe what we just did tonight will make a difference for probably scores of victims in each of your districts, and some extraordinary people that have been hurting for decades sometimes. Anyways, thank you, and thanks for the privilege of speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Yes, sir. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have a minute of personal privilege, if I could.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. This is on a lighter subject. I have noticed that in the audience tonight is one of the Little League baseball players that I coached all season, and his name is Landon Pokrant. If you want to stand up, Landon, and say hello. He and I are actually missing a tournament pool play game that there is ongoing right now over at Diamond West Little League Fields at Jade Ballpark, and hopefully they're going to do well without us. But the reason Landon is missing that game is because there's a family wedding going on, and I see his extended family sitting there, and if they would all like to stand, just so you know, the connection to the Anchorage Assembly, Landon is Greg Moyer's grandson, and Greg Moyer was...
Yes, I'm going to bring Johnny Moyer up here in just a minute when you're done.
Oh, you are. Okay. I wasn't aware of that, but anyway, I'm just glad to see them all here and hope they're enjoying their time back in Alaska, and hope the wedding goes off well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I want to take a moment on the body, if you'll indulge me. I want to bring Johnny Moyer up here. He's Greg Moyer's son. Greg Moyer was our ombudsman. He was a city clerk. He was my go-to person if I had a problem when I was chairman. And Greg was the person to take care of it. So, welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Assembly and Administration. This is the first time, and I think when my dad retired, that the whole family is here in Anchorage again. So it's a good time here for a wedding. And thank you for allowing me to speak for a few minutes. But yes, my dad passed away in January, and he spent 22 years of his entire public service career here at the City of Anchorage. Started out in the Office of Management and Budget, moving his way to the City Manager's Office, and finally coming to you guys here at the Assembly, where he worked there as the Director of the Assembly, going further to the Clerk's Office and Ombudsman Director. A lot of good times here, many Tuesday nights till 11 o'clock or later, which I understand you guys would know very well. Mr. Chairman, you were here for so many years of that. He had many very fond stories of you and several of the old past administrations. He was here for 5 different administrations that went through here, going back to Tony Knowles. Many different assembly members, going back 22 years. When I was looking at his resume and I saw 22 years, it reminded me of a funny story. I don't know if you remember Brian Whittle and his campaign. Right before that, my dad had just become the clerk, and they said you had to live in your district for at least a year. Well, he had lived in the same house for 22 years, and that was his whole campaign mantra. And my dad had a city clerk kind of go on that. But I want to say thank you to the Assembly and to the City of Anchorage for the 22 years he was able to serve the public here. He put a lot of inspiration to me to join public service as well, and that's what I'm doing in Oklahoma. I've worked for several members down there in Congress. And moving forward with that. But I want to say thank you to Elvie and Joy. They were there from kind of the very beginning when he became the director of the Assembly.
Why don't the two of you just come up so we can identify who you are? Come on, Joy. Don't hide in your shadow. Come on out.
Yes, and I just want to thank you guys so much for coming. I mean, we started on the second floor, and then we moved down to the corner office. All the times we went to Humpies, and all those different little games we used to play in the office that we won't tell you guys about. But I really appreciate you coming. It means a lot. It means a lot to my family. I know he had a lot of very good things, and just really enjoyed working with you guys. So,
Your dad was a great public servant. If I needed it done, he did it, and we appreciate that.
Yes. And one thing he taught me in public service is, he may not always agree with you guys and the resolutions that you guys want to pass. But that wasn't a thing. He worked for you. He served you, and he served you very well, and he's taught that and passed it on to me. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We got one question for you, sir. Mr. Peterson, sir?
Well, I was just going to add that I actually first started coaching Little League Baseball as Greg's assistant at Nunaka Valley in 2001. So we're maintaining the tradition that now it's Nunaka City as we've merged with City View Little League. And so I'm sure Greg had been coaching there for a decade or more before I started helping as his assistant. So we've got a pretty good tradition going over there with Nunaka Valley Little League, and we're going to try to keep it going. Thanks.
Elvie, Joy, anything? You guys worked with him more intense probably than anybody.
I wasn't going to say anything, but just real briefly. I mean, Greg was pretty amazing, and Joy and I, we had a blast working with him. He had a great sense of humor. We worked really, really hard, but every now and again we had just a little bit of downtime like everybody else. And we decided one day that we were going to watch a movie. And we're in the conference room. We had a TV and a video recorder for business, but we were in there watching a movie, and I'll never forget, Joy and Greg were over there, and I was by the door. And I heard the door open. I said, "I'm sorry, I'm out of here. You're on your own." And it's just wonderful, great memories of Greg, because he worked really hard, and we got the work done, but we had so much fun doing it. And that's what it's all about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we do remember when I moved him as clerk.
Yes, I do.
And they said, "You can't do that. He's not a trained clerk." What I wanted was a manager, and that's exactly what he did.
And he was amazing.
So, thank you three for being here in the family.
Welcome. Thank you.
Greg was a wonderful man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If we don't leave, we have that seat on the far end if you're homesick. On our agenda, we can take up before our dinner break item 11A, old business, unfinished action on public hearing items, Assembly Memorandum AM 507-2017, Urban Design Commission appointment of Barbara Cash. If I get a motion to approve that, I'd appreciate it.
Move to approve.
Second.
If I get a second. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That is approved, Madam Clerk. We're now taking our regular scheduled dinner break. We should be back in about 25 minutes. Boy. Yeah, item 14A, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
We've got 6 in chambers and a clerk. That's all I need. Item 14A is first. Oh, that's right. You don't count. We have 6, Amy? Okay, we're starting. Ms. Dabowski's not participating because her husband's a firefighter, so she's not participating in this. Item 14A is Resolution Air 2017-222, a resolution approving administrative agreement IAFF AA number 17-01 between Municipality MOA and the International Association of Firefighters Local 1264 IAFF to change the expiration date of the current labor contract agreement CBA from June 30th, 2018 to June 11th, 2017, and to ratifying the new IAFF CBA to be effective July 12, 2017. Employee relations. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name and country for the record. Spell your last name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. That item is approved 9-0. Ms. Zabowski could come back to join us now. Next item in front of us is item 14B, Resolution AR 2017-240, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $105,000 from Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities, DOTPF, Federal Transportation Equity Act for the 21st Century funding to the Anchorage Project Management Engineering Department within the Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Service Area Capital Improvement Fund 461 for support related to AMAT's Anchorage Area-Wide Trails Rehabilitation Project Management and Engineering. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? I need a motion to approve in a second.
We are locked up right now.
Move to approve.
We're not locked up.
There we go.
Mr. Dyson, any comment on this one, sir? This is item 14B.
Yeah, I know what it is. Is there somebody here from Parks and Rec?
Mr. Rada here?
All right, I withdraw my request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steele, sir. Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Not seeing any? Please vote. This is approved 8-0. Next item in front of us. Is item 14C, Ordinance AO 2017-96, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of ownership of certain interests in the Mount Leona School located on Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson, to a portion within TW4, Section 8, T31N, R3W, to the Department of the Air Force, and amendment of the land lease for the school grounds. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, curve with the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and saying none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This is a question for the administration. I support this. I just was wondering why the kind of ping pong back and forth of this property.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Constant, this site was in use as a ASD-operated school for the last 50 or 60 years. And late last year, the school district decided they were no longer going to offer the special needs preschool and early elementary program at Mount Iliamna School. So it was then considered for other municipal uses, and we determined that there was not an appropriate use for the facility. And so as a result, at this time, we're relinquishing that building back to the military, as is required if it's not going to be used as a school or other municipal facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Costa, we don't. That's actually on Elmendorf. And the part of the problem was it made it hard for parents to interact with their children there in the school. So that's part of the reason the school district has moved Mount I to about 4 other schools to make it easier and better for the students. Any other discussion? If not, please vote. Mr. Constant, there you go. The vote's 11-0. That's approved. Next item in front of us is item 14D, Resolution AR 2017-245, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving marijuana license and special land use permit for marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M11635, doing business as Cloudberry Partners, located at 3307 Spinard Road. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward. State your name and for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Welcome to the meeting, ma'am.
Hello. Last name is Mariscal, Mariscal, and I am here to ask the Assembly to consider limiting the number of establishments of this kind in my neighborhood. I own a bakery, and it is very difficult for me to keep my doors open when there is smell of marijuana early in the mornings and late in the evenings in my neighborhood.
Anything else, ma'am?
That's it.
Mr. Wilton has a question. Mr. Wilton?
Hi. Well, that's a valid concern, but so are you experiencing a problem with another marijuana retail now?
I am. I attended a council meeting on the 14th of June. I wrote to my representatives, which is Croft and Steele, and I have not heard a response from them.
Okay, because if you can smell marijuana from outside the facility, they're breaking the rules, because one of the conditions for all of them is that that not happen, period.
Right. I know all that. Everybody tells me that, but the smell is there.
Okay, did you contact anyone besides the Assembly members?
I did.
Okay.
The state, and also, I don't have the name here, but the Health and Human Services, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We might follow up with staff, I think. Is that the wave back there, Dave? Okay. Thank you. That's important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a couple other people want to talk to you for a minute. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask where your bakery is located.
It's 1406 West 31st. However, the entrance to the bakery is on 32nd. There's an establishment already approved on Minnesota and 32nd. This will be on Spinard and 32nd. So I'm right in the middle.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
I think that's about it, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the Assembly? Please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Somebody needs to make a motion.
Forrest got it?
The buttons are stuck.
Oh, they're stuck. Oh, move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Wilton?
I guess I'd like to invite Mr. Whitfield up to speak to that problem when he's ready. Well, he's not quite prepared. I just comment, we did on the Community and Economic Development Committee review this in detail, and as a committee we recommended approval. And Mr. Whitfield, can you address that issue?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I was
Can you talk about, so she has a problem with an existing marijuana that has smell, and we've been telling people we've got some ironclad tools to make sure there's no problems.
Correct,
Be wrong?
correct. And the way that we would handle this is I would put in a complaint to code enforcement and have an enforcement officer go out there immediately to take a look at that and identify whether or not a violation is present. So we would handle that immediately. So, yeah. I mean, obviously, it is a condition with every one of these marijuana facilities, and certainly we want to take her complaint and investigate it. So we'll do that immediately.
Good. Can you email me the result?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Will do.
Mr. Wilton, part of the problem is code enforcement is complaint driven.
Right.
So unless it gets to code enforcement, they don't respond to it.
Right, I understand. We have a woman here who's paying attention enough to know to come to this meeting, but if she's missed that step of going to code enforcement, we're not making it obvious enough how to resolve a problem that we have worked hard to prevent.
I know.
So it's kind of, we should work on a routine.
I'll coordinate with her, and then I'll make sure that code enforcement goes out there, hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
We do have them sent to the clerk, so I want distribution to all assembly members.
Absolutely.
Because this pertains to all of us.
Absolutely.
Because we tell everybody license A, they no restrictions, they can't have the smell go out.
Yep, I will. I'll handle it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Dave. You're going to have a couple questions, so you might as well just hang out.
Okay.
Mine's actually relatively easy. I just didn't see it in this one. I saw it in the next one. What is the distance to the closest protected land use in this particular establishment?
The closest protected land, or the distance is, actually, I'm not sure what the distance is, but they've all been met in terms of separation distance.
Is it?
I don't know exactly what that one
Is
is.
it less than 1,000 feet?
I think it is less than 1,000 feet, correct.
Okay. So who is the petitioner here tonight? Can you raise your hand if you're here? Thank you. Dave, can I just ask him a quick question? You know what I'm going to ask. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Can you tell me, for the record, just say your name?
Sandra Brown.
Okay, Mr. Brown, I typically do this with all people who are within 1,000 feet because of guidelines on a federal level and potential issues with federal enforcement. Do you know how far the distance is between your establishment and the closest protected land use?
I know that we've met the required distance. I don't have that right off the top of my head, no.
Do you know what the closest protected land use is?
I do not. I know that we are, no, I do not.
Is it a school by chance?
I don't believe so.
Okay. The only reason I ask you these questions is because when we first drafted these laws, our council, the Department of Law, recommended we set the separation distance at 1,000 feet. Here in the corpus of the municipality, the Assembly chose to do 500 feet. But I think it's important that all owners, when they go in with their eyes open, knowing that you do have the potential, if the federal government decides to enforce safe school routes or whatever, they could come in and shut you down. I just want you to know that on the record, and you acknowledge that.
Yes, I do, and we kind of took that into consideration. We looked at the property as well, too.
Okay.
I'm a parent myself, so.
I just wanted to make sure you knew. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dombowski. Not all of us voted to reduce it to 500, ma'am. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, for you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I remember relatively soon after I got off on the body, we talked about a machine that the municipality was going to purchase. Was it the Super Nose, or it had some kind of name? What was the name of that?
I'm not sure, but the Super Sniffer or something like that was yeah. I think we had talked about possibly buying one, but I don't know if there was an attempt to actually do so.
Okay.
This is something we should probably take into further consideration.
So practically, and that would that be you, or that would be the code enforcement?
That would be code
officer
enforcement. That is, yeah.
Right. And we have a special marijuana code enforcement officer
Correct.
in the books.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, when you go into a place like Spenard or many neighborhoods in Anchorage, how do you tell if the marijuana smell is coming from this business as opposed to sort of the ambient marijuana smell that permeates much of our community?
It's very difficult, and in fact, we've investigated several of these, and it's to be completely honest with you, it's difficult to tell where exactly it's coming from. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
So are you saying that there's sort of a blue haze cloud hanging over Spenard?
Not at all. No. Not at all.
No, I'm just wanted to make a joke. Anyway, The point that I'm trying to make is that this particular business has not got their license yet, so they are not open for business. So they could not be responsible for anything that people are smelling at this point in time. So we certainly can't hold it against Cloudberry Partners. And so I just thought I'd point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, thank you. In your research or perhaps professional society, have you seen any studies that have done some longitudinal studies on the impact of pot shops in neighborhoods?
Mr. Dyson, no, I've not, and I'm not aware of any studies. When we review these marijuana licenses, we're reviewing them against the marijuana ordinance and whether or not they meet the requirements of the code. So no, I haven't looked into that, but I can assure you that the applications before you tonight meet the requirements of Title 21.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And this is just a general question to the complaint. I've got close relationships with the folks at the Spenard Community Council, and I inquired. And the response that I received was that the complaint did come to the Community Council from the French Bakery, which is approximately 8 blocks away from the nearest marijuana licensed location, about 8 blocks. And so the concern is genuine. The practical reality is that this scent couldn't possibly come from the licensed facility that's on Spenard at this time, in my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go on Mr. Peterson's comment and to defend, I think, Ms. Mariscal's concern here that with this second layer that this body so wisely adopted for permitting and licensing marijuana, we need to make sure that our enforcement has teeth. So, and we need to make sure that the public at large knows the process to follow. So it seems like maybe there was a little bit of miscommunication or the right information didn't get to the right hands. So I think it's a valid concern and one with more approval of shops we might hear more from.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, and just to follow on Mr. Constant's point, I was at that Spenard Community Council meeting, and that was exactly what we heard. She has a very legitimate complaint about marijuana smell in her neighborhood. It's just not easy to attribute to those relatively distant marijuana establishments.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion from Assembly members? If not, please vote. That was approved 10-1. Next item in front of us, item 14E, Resolution AR 2017-247, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for a marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M10890, doing business as True North Cannabis, located at 735 West 4th Avenue. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly, spell your last name for us, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Welcome, sir.
Hi, I'm Wiley Brooks. I live in South Anchorage. I became before you a couple of weeks
Could you pull the microphone closer so that... Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah, works great.
Okay. As I told you a couple of weeks ago, I have some real concerns because I have a building that's going to be sitting between two marijuana shops if this is approved. It does not make a lot of sense to me for two marijuana shops to be 2 doors apart. I think you're looking for trouble. You got 2 bars and 2 pot shops that are going to be within one spot, essentially. So I came before you a couple of weeks ago to support Bob Newman, who was asking for a moratorium until the Downtown Partnership can come up with some recommendations. They're meeting tomorrow. I strongly encourage you to wait to see what comes out of that meeting. Any questions?
A couple. Mr. Constant, sir.
Actually, sir, thank you. And my question you just answered, and I was really aware that they're meeting tomorrow because that's an important meeting for the downtown businesses to speak about what they want.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brooks, have you had a chance to speak with the owners of either of these establishments, either the one that's been approved or the one that's likely to be approved?
Nope.
Would you consider, I mean, are there specific concerns you have?
I'd be, I have no objections to meeting with them.
Okay. Well, I believe one of them is here tonight, so perhaps you guys, after the meeting, could speak. And if there is some, I'm familiar with your property, I'm familiar with that area, and perhaps if there is some specific concern you have, hopefully the gentleman who owns this, will potentially own this establishment, if we approve it, he can speak with you on that.
I would hope the Assembly is real concerned about the lowering of property values and the tax base for the downtown area. As I told you before, my building is 70% vacant, and there's no doubt in my mind, because I'm being I'm being told by potential tenants that my space is good, but they don't like my neighbors.
Thank you, sir. There are no other questions. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to testify in this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I second. I have an amendment, though.
That's fine. We still need to get a motion on the floor before we can start amending it.
Point of order. I think, are you moving, we have an S version.
S version, yeah.
I will move the S version.
Okay. We've got the S version moved in front of us. Mr. Constant,
Yep.
amendment on the S version?
Yeah, so I was at the public safety meeting, or not the public safety, the community and economic development meeting when this permit was discussed. And there was an additional condition that was added to the license that was to ensure that the applicant conformed to what they promised the community council, and that was that they wouldn't use the back door for customer use. Somehow, in the transliteration of that comment into the condition, it became that shall be restricted to employee access only. So I'm moving an amendment that would strike that line, and it would instead say, shall not be used by customers, because that door may in fact be used by vendors, repairmen, people who are doing behind-the-counter work that needs to be done, but a statement that it is only to be used by employees creates a very strict standard.
Thank you. Is there a second on that
Second.
amendment?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Okay.
Mr. Dunbar?
I failed to make a point. Could I just say one quick thing?
We normally don't, but go ahead. What is it, sir?
I think you need to take a close look. You may be within 500 feet of the Holy Family Cathedral. I know it's very near it, and they may even have a daycare center that they operate there.
Thank you, sir. I've got Mr. Wilton and you, Mr. Dunbar.
Okay.
Let me go to Mr. Wilton first. Mr. Wilton, on the amendment.
Oh, on the amendment.
On the amendment, sir.
Okay, well, just on that, you know, at that meeting, I believe Mr. Constant's interpretation is correct, that the intent was simply to limit it so it would not be used by customers in line with their MOU with them. I guess they don't do an MOU, but their agreement with the community council. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
On
Trainee.
the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. On the amendment, I just wanted to, and I agree too, I think it was relatively non-controversial. I think this is fine, but I wanted to give the purveyors an opportunity to speak to this amendment if they would like. Is there anything you'd like to say about this amendment before we potentially pass it? And perhaps you could communicate on the record whether or not you intend to allow customers to go in and out the north door.
Thank you. Through the chair, Janet Weltzine, representative for True North Cannabis.
Michael Ward.
He's one of the applicants. We told the community council in downtown that because of the lighting issues in the back, they just felt more comfortable if we only had employees or if we only had customers, I apologize, go through the front. So we just wanted to honor that, that statement that we made to the community council. And then I just also wanted to reiterate, and it's in your packet, that we are 660 feet or more. It says a plus after it, from the, is it Holy? That's your church.
Holy Family Cathedral.
Holy Family.
Dunbar?
So just to clarify then, you have no opposition to this amendment?
Oh, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, I want you to vote, if you would, please, on the amendment. This is on the amendment. That amendment is approved 10-1. We're now back to the main motion in front of us. Any other discussion? Mr. Wilton, on the main motion as amended in front of us.
We looked at this carefully at the Community and Economic Development Committee last Thursday, and we recommended approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the applicant, my standard, could you come forward, please? Sir, I didn't catch your last name.
Michael Ward, W-A-R-D.
Mr. Ward, you're not within 1,000 feet of a school, so I think the impact of my typical spiel is probably diminished. But I still do want you to affirmatively acknowledge that you recognize you are within 1,000 feet, and you're willingly taking that risk.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, sir. There are no other questions from you. Mr. Peterson, sir, on
Thank
the
you.
document in front as amended.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The location of similar businesses in close proximity to each other is not anything new. I was in the pizza business, and within 5 years after opening, there were 4 additional outfits that opened up within 2 blocks. And I don't know how many locations there are where there are gas stations right next to each other or across the street from each other. And so I think competition is good. We have a free enterprise form of economy, and so if one of these businesses is more outstanding than the other, then maybe one of them would fail. So I don't think we should be picking and choosing at this point in time who should get a license and who shouldn't based on where their location is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion from assembly members? Not appearing to see any. Please vote. This will approve the document in front of us or not as amended. We need one other. There you go. That was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us, item 14F, Resolution AR 2017-241, resolution appropriating $588,999 of area-wide Fund 101 fund balance to the Office of Economic Community Development for the 2016 operating budget, area-wide General Fund 101 for payment of Sullivan Arena site net operating deficit. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward. Jake Jim Kerr for the record and spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't able to attend the committee meeting, and I apologize for that. And this just scares me a little bit. It's kind of the heart of our downtown commercial hub, and I definitely want to see us come up with some creative ways to keep this place rolling. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion from assembly members? Please vote. That is approved. Mr. Dunbar, we've previously changed order of the day. Take up that other resolution.
So
One in front of us is item, I think, 9B7.
Mm-hmm. Do you need a motion to approve?
No, what I just need to bring it up here.
Okay.
I'll need a motion to approve because it's not a public hearing item. If you make a motion to approve, I'd appreciate it.
Motion to approve item 9B7.
Second. Is there a second? Okay. What it is, this is AR 2017-256, a resolution of the Municipal Assembly directing the administration to report periodically per quarter on the operation, management, and revenues and expenses of the George M. Sullivan Sports Arena. Do you want to take the chairmanship for a minute? Here.
Sure. Would you like to speak, Mr.
Yes.
Trainee?
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm bringing this forward is because I think we need to know where the Sullivan Sports Arena is going, both positive and negatives. And quite frankly, I don't think it's too much of a burden to ask the administration quarterly to tell us where we're going with this. and we heard the administration, SMG, say we're going to up the amount of income coming in, we're going to market it. I want to see correlate what they're doing. I don't ever want us to get to the point again where we, at the end of the year, and we've got to pay $588,999 to balance the books out. And this contract doesn't come up for renewal till 2020. So that's the reason I'm bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Here's your gavel.
Mr. Wilton?
Well, I guess that maybe I should have spoken on the earlier thing on this, but for people who are watching and wonder why the heck we're doing this, is we have a contract with SMG that requires us to cover any losses that they have. So this is unpleasant for all of us, but it's really, we don't really have any choice. It's in our agreement with them. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So we had a very good, I thought, work session on this where we got a lot of information, but I realized that there are people watching that maybe didn't get that chance. I was wondering if, Chris, would you be willing to come up and just talk a little bit about the efforts to get new business into the Sullivan? There was talk about the Sports Dome, for example, and the pursuit of other potential opportunities.
Thank you. Through the chair, Assemblymember Dunbar. Yes, SMG, which is the private firm that manages the facility for us, they have been actively working on developing new business lines, if you will. While the ACES closure is a huge financial hit, it also has the silver lining of a little bit of opportunity in that we have a lot of dates that the facility is now open and available, whether that's for large-scale concerts, or as you alluded to, other indoor-specific events, activities, sports, etc. The Sullivan Arena, the Municipality of Anchorage Parks and Rec Department and Facilities, we are currently going through a $1.25 million state grant, legislative grant, that has money in it for improvements at the Sullivan Arena, one of which will include new artificial turf for the facility, allowing it to be used by soccer clubs, indoor flag football clubs, etc. So there's a number of new avenues that SMG is pursuing, and in alignment with the resolution from Assemblymember Trainee, we are requiring an annual business plan from SMG. We're working very closely with them on monitoring the progress of achieving the goals they lay out in their own business plan. Everyone's on the same page with the intent of turning that facility around.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte.
Mr. Schutte, I want to tell you one thing. We talked to SMG, and they were saying, I think in October 5th, we're going to have the gun show back here in Anchorage at Sullivan, and that's good because what happened in the past was that last year Gun Collectors Association couldn't economically book that, so they ended up moving to Wasilla to the State Fairgrounds. It'll be nice, so come this October, people that go to that don't have to drive all the way to the State Fairgrounds.
I agree.
I appreciate SMG doing that.
I agree. Thank you.
Any other discussion from Assembly members? If not, please vote. You're voting on the resolution. That was approved by the body. We're now down to item 14G. Resolution AR 2017-242, resolution appropriating $446,376 to the Anchorage Water Utility AWU 540. $119,300 to the Anchorage Wastewater Utility ASU Fund
Wait,
500.
reading.
Okay, this is MUSA payments based on the final 2017 mill rates. Anybody wish to testify, please come in front of us. You've got 3 minutes. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no public testimony is closed, so what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve. Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. Discussion for Assembly members. Please vote. That passed unanimously. It is approved. Next item in front of us is item 14H, ordinance AO 2017-97, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to amend Anchorage Municipal Code sections 26.10.025 and 26.10.065 to adopt a revised method for calculating utility revenue distribution to the municipality.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public hearing this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name. Tell support Tony Levin. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in support of this. I just wanted to put a little note out there on the record that when a few years ago there was another mayor, another administration, another assembly, and one of the things that caused me to want to run was this kind of ongoing and persistent appearance of taking advantage of our lower income neighbors. And I forget if it was solid waste or if it was MLNP, but the previous mayor had decided that they were going to take $7 million, and then the assembly finally settled on $2 million that was taken from the capital kind of pool of funds from one of these two utilities and given as citywide tax relief to taxpayers. And what that essentially did was took funds from basically a very small subset of our city, and in particular the lowest income parts of our town, and redistributed the low income dollars into high income property owners' pockets. And that was really sad and awful, and I hope that the priorities set going forward are very careful on how these funds are spent instead of giving away, robbing the poor to give to the rich. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion from assembly members? Not seeing any discussion, please vote. That was approved unanimously, 11 to nothing. Next item in front of us is item 14I, Ordinance AO 2017-9, an ordinance amending the zoning map approving the rezoning of approximately 7.16 acres from B3SL General Business District with special limitations, AO 2003-142 to PLI Public Lands and Institutions District for Tract 1 of UMed Professional Parks Subdivision.
Waive reading.
Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name, crew for the record, spell your last name, tell us what project you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from assembly members? If not, please vote. That was approved. That now completes our agenda. There are no special orders I'm aware of. Audience participation. Is there anybody who would like to discuss it? Mr. Smith, there's another guy who needs to come up first. I'll get to you in a minute. Sir, come on up. They got me at the first part of the meeting, and they waited a long time. And the administration might want to listen to this as a problem, I think, with water drainage. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
My name is John Strong, and I've had a flooding problem for 27 years because the municipality wouldn't do nothing about it. I've had my name forged on documents.
Would you move the microphone down closer to him? Thank you.
I've had my name forged on documents that the municipality wouldn't give to me because it committed a crime. And I've been through heck for years, and my witness just left here a little bit ago. I've had people that refuse to talk to me. I tried to get appointments with code enforcement people, and they were told not to talk to me. And in 2012, the municipality gave the owner of the mud dam a permit to put the road in over it, knowing that I'd been flooded out for 20 years. And the mud dam was put in, was 17 feet high at the end of my property. And when the municipality put the road in over it, it was sunk down to 2 feet. And my flooding problem doubled. In 2014, we had 19 inches of rain, and I had water on my floors 4 times during the 3 weeks. And I complained to the city manager about it, tried to get him to enforce. I've had 3 abatement orders that the municipality refused to enforce. And I've paid over $14,000 in septic tank pumping, cleaning out keep water from going on my floors since they put the road in over the dam. And I started a suit against the municipality 2 years ago, and the judge dismissed the case against me and wants me to pay their attorney's fees when they committed a crime against me. And I started a suit for the municipality to enforce the abatement orders and to remove that mud dam and the road over it. And I don't get nothing.
Okay. Where's your property located?
Pardon?
Where's your property located at?
Where's it located? Oh, on Avion Road, 11,800 Avion Road. That's out by the O'Malley Airstrip. My neighbor put the mud dam in '89. He put it in one day, and he was out of town the next day. And in 1980 or 90, I had 4 feet of water on my property, and I had 5 inches of water on my bedroom floors. And I couldn't get the municipality to come out and do anything about it. And in September of '93, one assembly member come out, and I happened to know him because I worked with him for about 20 years, and he had a job with the municipality in the building inspection department. And he said he was going to remove the dam. And he wrote out to have it removed by the 1st of July of '94, and I have never seen him again. And when I called about that...
Probably off the body by now.
Pardon?
He's probably off the body by now. No, it wasn't me. Let's ask the city manager.
Well, what I'm after is to get the municipality to enforce removing that mud dam in the road, stop my flooding.
Mr. Abbott, sir?
Did
you guys look into this?
I'm not familiar with this case, but Mr. Schutte and I will arrange to have code enforcement or right-of-way or building safety, whichever department makes the most sense, take a look at this.
And would you ask Mr. Falsey to look into legal aspects? Because if we're in sue with him right now, we probably shouldn't be discussing it, so we need to find out if we're actually in suit with him.
Thank you,
Mr. Crofts, sir, you were online.
Yeah, I just wondered what you wanted, which was the address, so thank you.
Mr. Wilton, sir?
If you contact...
I had a good witness to some of the situations that happened to her, but she left. And you got her place. She witnessed one situation where I was trying to get an appointment with the head of a department, and somebody told him not to talk to me. And she heard the ombudsman lady and I arguing, so she stopped to see what was going on. And one of the members of the municipality said that my flooding was my fault because I built my house in a hole. And she loaded up the guy that said I built my house in a hole and the ombudsman lady and took him out there and showed him that I didn't build my house in a hole. Because I built my house at the head of a valley.
Anything else, Mr. Wilton?
I'd be happy to come out and take a look. I live right down the street or nearby, and I'm curious. I mean, I'm not sure I can solve your problem, but I'd sure want to look at it.
He wants to come look at it.
Why don't you deal with...
Yeah, just give me a call.
When you're done, talk to Mr. Wilton.
I'll make an appointment with anybody and show him some real paperwork.
Mr. Wilton wants to go and look at your...
Who was that?
Down there.
Oh, Middleton.
There are no other questions. Thank you for being here, sir.
Okay, well, I'm kind of hard of hearing because I had my eardrums blowed out.
It happens.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Okay,
get with the administration, too, okay? I want to make sure we don't lose this. Mr. Abbott's over there. Give him your phone number so we can contact you, okay?
Who's that? He wants us to talk to Mr. Abbott. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Smith, sir.
Good evening, Assembly. Don Smith, S-M-I-T-H. I'm here tonight because I work with a lot of people in this town as far as drugs and alcohol. I get them out I get them jobs. I get them clean and sober, working, getting back with their families, and I'm having a real bad time in this town. I've tried to talk to the mayor and a group of other people that have been working with us on this drugs and alcohol and all this gang stuff's going on. I'm too old to chase these people down now more because they're intimidating all these young people and people, 30, 35 years old that I've got clean for a year and a half, and I've invested a lot of money and a lot of time and caring with it. And what they're doing is they're intimidating them to come back in, sell drugs, even if they're not using the drugs, by threatening them with their families and that. And I don't want to hear any more about, well, we're working on this or we're working on that. The same drug dealers from the top largest drug dealers in this state are still selling drugs in our city for 3 tiers down, and none of them have been arrested for years. They're selling drugs in every parking lot we've got in this town. Our town is being ate up by drugs. That was your platform there. I'm having to go out there and pull these young kids out of these dope houses and stuff to get them away from this. I'm too old to be doing this anymore. And everybody, I talk to a police officer, and they go, well, they got rights to. Excuse me, the people of Anchorage that are doing what's right have the rights. You don't have any rights if you're out here killing people. Excuse me. But something has to be done. This can't be something that everybody just talks about when they want to get elected in this town or this state. It's terrible. We've got people walking around dead inside. We have to do something. We're hiring more police officers. We're doing this. We're doing that. Nothing's getting done. The same drug dealers, I'm talking large multi-million-dollar drug dealers. And 3 tiers down. If I can go sit in a parking lot in this town, any parking lot, and sit for an hour and see 2 or 3 drug deals going down, don't tell me that they can't be arrested. I've got...
Mr. Smith, your time's up, sir. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, my whole damn time's always up. Anyway, let's do something about it, okay? Our kids are dying in this town, and no more political talk. Let's do something. Let's make arrests. Let's get them in jail. Let's keep them in jail.
Mr. Smith, your time is up, sir.
Thank you very much. And we are going to get us a new mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else wish to address this on anything? Hearing and saying no, topic testimony is closed. We're down to assembly comments. Any comments from assembly members? The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. 6:59.